What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Here, guys, Derek and Cody with you as always. And guys, we actually had this video pre-recorded ahead of time, and basically a few hours before it was supposed to go out, Cody and I decided it probably wouldn't be a good idea to upload it, considering how many people got cut today, how many people were supposed to get or might get cut still. Guys who got tagged and people who are in the middle of trade opportunities because, the week before the free agency period starts, Cody, it can get a little wild. So basically we put down a giant list of a bunch of people who are either cut, presumed to be cut, or guys that you could trade for that are on the trading block from what we have heard. So we'll start with the wide receivers here, Cody, because there's a couple of them. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a ton of them that are immediate huge guys, but there are some good names here. Robert Woods is one of them. He's going to be a free agent. Keenan Allen, who's supposed to be a cap casualty here soon. Allen Robinson is seeking a trade out of Los Angeles. Jerry Jeudy is actually in the middle of trade talks from Denver. They're trying to accumulate picks. And of course, DeAndre Hopkins has been a big name as well. What do you make of this group of guys here, man? Do you think there's any of these guys the Indianapolis Colts should be taking a look at?
Yeah, I want to throw one more out there because you talked about Jerry Jeudy. Actually, and this was reported by a few different people, and take them as you will. According to Matthew Berry, the Broncos are also quietly shopping wide receiver Courtland Sutton as well. So, with that being said, I think, you talk about getting a rookie quarterback in here. I just think you personally, and I've thought this even back to last year, if you listen to the podcast, I think we both were in that camp of you just need to sign a veteran wide receiver because, as good as Reggie Wayne is, he's a great coach, you just can't beat having a vet out there to help these young guys. And so there's a lot of guys potentially on the market here. And, I think Shane Steichen will want one of these guys. He'll want somebody in there to make life easier on the rookie quarterback that you're going to take, right? And so you've seen different teams do this with their rookie quarterbacks. They've paired them with a very talented wide receiver and given them plenty of weapons to succeed early on. I mean, that's just kind of what they've done. I mean, you look, obviously, with the Bengals, with Jamar Chase going, with Joe Burrow. Then you look at, obviously the Bills, they got Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen. Like, you just see teams start doing this stuff for these younger quarterbacks. And so I think a lot of these guys, I mean, obviously the most instant impact guy would probably be Hopkins just because of what he's done and the fact that he's still a productive wide receiver. Obviously had that suspension, but really, I think Hopkins is the best overall right now, the best player that you'd be looking to acquire. The only thing is he's going to cost you some money. He's going to obviously cost you some draft capital. Now, saying it for a player of Hopkins, stature and what he can be, instantly be the number one here in Indy. It's only a second round pick, I believe, that they're seeking. So that's very achievable to get. But the question is, with some guys you're trying to re-sign and, how much, with the looming probably Matt Ryan cut or retirement, with some other guys potentially being cut or restructured, like what's your cap situation going to look like? And maybe you wait to make a trade like this or wait to do that until you figure out kind of what your cap is a little bit. But I think a guy out of all these guys that I'd really want to pair with a young quarterback is probably honestly Jerry Jeudy, just because he's still cheap. He's on his rookie deal still. And I really think that he's a very talented wide receiver. I don't know if he'd be the number one right away, but he definitely would be a nice pair with Pittman, with Pierce, and potentially with Campbell as well. So I think he's definitely the guy with the most potential still. He's a young guy. And to have him paired along with a CJ Stroud, a Will Levis, a Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, whoever, it's two talented guys, working together and could potentially build that bond moving forward. So Jerry Jeudy would be a guy that I think would have the most upside for, the future. But Robert Woods, obviously, he has a little bit of the injury concern. Coming back from that major injury, he wasn't the same with the Titans last year, and they're kind of in a weird cap situation, so they had to let him go. Keenan Allen would be a very interesting name, though, if he does get released, and we'll see exactly if he does. I mean, the Chargers aren't really in a place to just keep around all these players, right? They got to start making some cuts. They got to start getting rid of some guys, and Keenan Allen could be one of those guys. As good as he's been for the Chargers, he could be a nice vet piece in there, kind of fill more of that, slot kind of route runner type of wide receiver that the Colts don't really have right now. That could really serve a good role for this offense and complement to the other guys currently on the roster. Those are a couple names. Allen Robinson's one that I think is just interesting, just because I feel like every time he's become available, Colts fans have linked him to the Colts, and so he's older now. He's 29 years old. He's got that massive contract. So I would be interested in him on the contingent that LA eats a lot of that cap space. They eat a lot of that money, because it doesn't seem like it's a situation where the Colts are coming begging like, hey, we want Allen Robinson. We're willing to take this on. It's like, it almost seems like the Colts would be doing them a favor, if you will. So I think that would kind of be the situation there where I would be comfortable with Allen Robinson. How about Adam Thielen, though? 33 years old, a little bit older, but he's always been a consistent two. And I always have liked Adam Thielen. I think he's obviously always been overshadowed by really good wide receivers and Stephon Diggs for years, and then obviously Justin Jefferson now. I think he could be a nice kind of complement, kind of route runner type of thing. He's nothing like special when it comes to the athlete. He's not like an athletic freak, but like, he's so reliable. He gets open. And there's a reason the last couple of years, Derek, he's been targeted about 100 times each season. Like, the quarterbacks trust him, and they've trusted him. That's been kind of his thing throughout his career. And so I think there's a lot of names here. I would like to see the Colts get one of these guys. Who knows where their mindset is right now, but I do think it would be prudent and wise to get a guy. And maybe, you take a bet on a Jerry Jeudy and you give away, I think right now, Derek, obviously Hopkins is more of a finished product than Jerry Jeudy. But I would rather if I'm giving away a second round pick for Hopkins or Jeudy, I might lean Jeudy just because the potential is there. He's younger, and I might take a chance on that he will grow with a young quarterback than a DeAndre Hopkins, as good as Hopkins is, for the contract. And then obviously just because I feel like he obviously has a lot more potential here. So that's kind of my thoughts on the wide receivers. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think each one you can make a case for. But I think Jerry Jeudy out of all these is probably my favorite.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy would be a fun one to look at. DeAndre Hopkins, again, if you're looking at the best option for you in the current moment, DeAndre Hopkins would be the best one, especially if you're wanting to trade away a second rounder. And if the Colts don't end up trading away, that first and need that extra capital, then, DeAndre Hopkins going for your second would probably not be a terrible idea. Keenan Allen's another decent one, but I question the contract. Same thing with DeAndre. It's kind of the same scenario. And like you said, Allen Robinson, only going to take him if, LA is going to end up eating the majority of the contract, which I believe if they're going to trade him, it's going to end up that way anyway, because, they made a massive mistake paying him that much money and whatever happened to him on that. But yeah, that's some of the guys that we were talking about.
One more thing on Jerry Jeudy. Sorry, before we go to the other positions. He's only going to be 24, Derek, in April.
Yeah.
So he's going to potentially be as old as your rookie quarterback.
Right.
And the fact that you look at how horrendous the Broncos offense was. Jerry Jeudy still almost put up 1,000 yards in that offense last year. So, I mean, that just gives me, if the asking price is a second round pick, I think you take that and you don't look back. Like, that is 100% worth it for a player that talented. So, sorry, I just had to interject that. I didn't realize how young he was. I knew he was young, but I was like, gosh, he's still only 23. He's going to be 24 here next month. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And then we go ahead and go to the quarterbacks. Now, I know, Cody, we're going to talk about quarterbacks and, the draft and everything. Of course, whatever quarterback we draft, that's going to be the primary one. But, if the Colts end up cutting, Matt Ryan and Nick Foles, then you're going to have a situation where you're going to need a backup. And I think that there are two names just right off the bat that I could think of that could be really good backups for the Indianapolis Colts if they want to go forward with that. And those two names are Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, who is obviously cut by the Falcons, and Desmond Ridder is going to be the starter there. Marcus Mariota, to me, I think he knows he would be a backup, and you could get him for a lot cheaper. And I just think Marcus Mariota would be a good backup in certain situations, especially for, the potential system that Shane Steichen might run. I think that he could come up with a lot of different ways to help Marcus Mariota if indeed Mariota had to play. And I know I mentioned this in the live stream, Cody, and people freaking torched me for even suggesting the idea of bringing Jameis Winston into here, whether it be because of his past issues or the fact that he holds the record for most interceptions in a single season. But, all of that stuff was stuff that happened 3, 4, 5, 20 years ago, whatever. I'm talking about the player that he is now, the player that he was when he joined the Saints. He became a very efficient football player in that system. And then when he got hurt, unfortunately lost his job for unfair reasons. He should have been the quarterback to end the 2021 season when he did, but the Saints did him really dirty. And then obviously this last year, he was never the main starter, even though I felt like he should have been. I just think Jameis Winston for the right price, if you were getting him as a backup quarterback for the right price, then Jameis Winston, I think, is a fantastic addition to a staff. Now, the only problem with it is I don't know if Jameis Winston is going to want to accept that he's a backup. Like I said, he was a starter in 2021 and probably should have been when he came back from his injury, but got, derailed. Who knows what his confidence is like after what the Saints did to him this last year. Maybe he does take on the responsibility of saying, hey, I can come in and compete with whatever quarterback that the Indianapolis Colts are bringing in. I like what they're doing offensively, and they're willing to at least keep me in the loop if something were to happen. So, what do you think of these two guys for backup quarterbacks?
People got to remember, we're not talking about these guys being the starters for the Colts. Far from it. Absolutely not. There was people who were talking about both. Actually, funny enough, both these guys as starters for the Colts last offseason, if you remember that. But yeah, I think either of these guys, obviously, they're going to be backups for a reason. They both got issues. Winston obviously he's been careless with the ball in the past. Mariota's just never really lived up to where he was taken, obviously. But two guys that obviously still have talent. Like they're still talented, but they are what they are at this point. And so, I think obviously Mariota, you would get more of an option for him to be a backup. And I do think he would, accept that a little bit more than maybe a Jameis Winston. Winston's still 29 years old. Maybe he thinks I could be a starter somewhere. I'm not going to take backup money. I'm not okay being a backup. But maybe the Colts see that and they say, hey, you know what? We're going to take Richardson and we know he's going to take some work. But we want a capable veteran in here of Winston who, while yes, he's been wildly inconsistent in his time in the NFL, he has shown some things, right? He has shown that he can be a good quarterback in the right situation, in the right system. He's shown that he can be, he won't be the reason they lose, right? Now, obviously in the past, he has been the reason the teams have lost because of all the interceptions and all the timely turnovers and stuff like that. But yeah, strictly as a backup role, if Winston wants to take that, all right, yeah, I'm fine with that. Hopefully you don't even see him the whole season, right? That's the hope. But you feel like, okay, we have a very capable backup at that point. There's not really anybody that you look on this market and you say, oh my gosh, that is the best backup quarterback in the NFL. Heck, I'd even throw Jacoby Brissett on there as well. He could be a guy that I would be very interested to bring back into Indianapolis. And I think with what Shane Steichen's been able to do with quarterbacks, I feel like he has a certain way, with Frank Reich, the couple of years he was with Indy, working with new quarterbacks for the majority, except for really last year, he got the best out of the quarterbacks that he was given. He really did. And so I think Shane Steichen's kind of cut from that same cloth where, he can work with quarterbacks and he can get the best out of them. So, you get two guys who have some talent sitting there at your backup. I'd be fine with either one of them. And obviously, we hope that neither of them would be the starter for the Colts this next year. But
Right.
if Winston would take it, I would gladly take him. I'd probably choose him over Mariota just because Mariota is just kind of there for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really depends where Jameis is right now and kind of where he views himself and kind of what the role he envisions for himself this next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about wide receivers and quarterbacks. Let's stay on the offensive side here. Uh, Actually, Cody, I mean, we talked about interior offensive linemen, and I kind of looked deeper and deeper into this offensive line free agent class, and there's a couple of really decent ones that you could think of. Obviously, when we talked earlier about Shane Steichen, you talked about Isaac Suimalo, that is going to be, a free agent. Maybe Shane Steichen can convince him to come to Indianapolis. He is only 29 years old. He'll be 30 when the season starts. So, teeter-tottering in that mid-age kind of situation. But as long as injury stays the same, Isaac's been a really good player for them. And I don't think that would be an issue with paying him. You need interior depth. You need to get somebody to fix up that spot. Or even if you wanted to go for somebody like Evan Brown, the guard from Detroit. I know that a bunch of Colts podcasters have been throwing his name out there. In particular, Zach Hicks from like way back when the season ended for the Indianapolis Colts. That was one of the first names I heard him talk about with free agency. And, he's only 26 and a half. He only cost $2 million the year prior. He's not going to break the bank either, but he's definitely a quality guard that started for Detroit for many games. So you're talking about some of those. I mean, and there's a couple more that I could throw out there. You could throw out Billy Price's name. You can throw out a couple other ones that are in here. But we talk more about Isaac and Evan in this, because those are the two big ones that you feel like the Colts, if they wanted a full-time starter, those would be two of the main ones that you could get that were younger and cheaper and better situated. So what do you think of those two guards and maybe some others we could get?
Yeah, I would say for me, I think you just need competition in there. You just need competition, and I think either of these guys would be really good competition for Will Fries. And best case scenario, honestly, is Will Fries beats out whoever you bring in, and that you have a high quality backup. Like you have a Chris Reed kind of backup, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can play really good football in a pinch. That's just something the Colts didn't have last year, honestly, Derek, at guard. When Danny Pinter just wasn't it at guard and the Colts benched him, they were kind of scrambling to figure it out, right? They tried Will Fries. They tried Braden Smith at guard for a game. Like they tried everything, and they eventually settled on Fries, but he's still a very young player. And so I think the good thing is, if you bring in one of these two guys, they can be a high-quality guard for you, but they can also push Will Fries to potentially be even better. So I think competition breeds excellence, obviously. And so I really think it'd be a good opportunity to just add some more competition at guard, let Will Fries know, hey, your job isn't safe. You got to go out there and earn it, man. And if you don't, I feel fine with Will Fries as my 6. Honestly, I feel really good about that. So, yeah, I think that's where I would go. I would not be opposed to either of these guys. I think they're both good guards. Evan Brown's a little bit younger than Ciamolo, but either guy I think is a really quality right guard situation here for you.
Absolutely. All right, staying on the offensive side here for one more position, practically the only position we haven't talked about yet, other than running back. We have the tight end group. Now, I know, again, everyone's going to say the same thing, Cody. Everyone's going to say the same thing. Don't bring a tight end. You have 4 tight ends already, and 3 of them are all within their rookie deals, and 3 of them are looking to, be the next transcendent guys, right? Like that's the kind of situation we're talking about here. Well, this is in the off chance that somehow Mo Alie-Cox gets cut because of the contract that he has. He's not fulfilling the contract very well with production. And we're thinking of, maybe getting somebody else that can fulfill that role and, be that overall good tight end that's going to give you more production out of it. I mean, and what you're talking about, I mean, some of the top 4 tight ends, Cody, I mean, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, Austin Hooper, and Robert Tonyan Jr., all four of these guys are going to be, free agents. And Dalton Schultz is going to end up testing free agency because he's not getting tagged like he did last year. Mike Gesicki's not getting tagged. I would love either one of those options because they've always been productive. Gesicki did not have as much production last year due to the fact that Tyreek Hill took over, Jalen Waddle took over. It became more of the wide receiver show rather than Mike Gesicki. But then, you talk about some other decent options. I mean, Austin Hooper, who's been on a couple different teams as of recently, but he's only 28 years old. He's been productive. Robert Tonyan, again, he's only going to be 29. He's been productive. What do you make of this tight end group right here?
One more guy I'll throw on there, Hayden Hurst from
Yes.
Cincinnati.
Yep.
I think would be a really good option for the Colts, and he'd be cheap. I really do feel that way. So if you're going to go tight end, I don't know if I would go for one of those top two guys, even though obviously, they're very, talented tight ends. They've both been very productive. Like, I think you're right. Like, obviously it depends on what happens with Mo. If he does get cut, then you do need a tight end. But really, Derek, like, you have two really good receiving tight ends. How much more do you need to allocate to it? As good as these players are, I know you can never have too many weapons, but I guess my question is, like, with all the other holes and other potential things you're going to have to fill, are you comfortable giving, one of these two tight ends that you talked about a decent sized deal? Because that's what it's going to take to bring them to Indianapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and at the end of the day, it matters on, what do you think it provides for that young quarterback that you're bringing in, right? And you got three of these other tight ends that are costing you practically nothing, right? I mean, I don't think it'd be a terrible idea to have another veteran in that group, right? I think it would definitely be a very solid piece. But again, we'll just have to see. It's going to come down to what they want to do with it. Is that too much for that position, right? Because you got so many tight ends.
I would personally go a little bit cheaper and get like a Hayden Hurst type of player that's really not like, going to break the bank, but still can be productive given the opportunity,
Gotcha.
And I don't know actually how great of a blocker he is, but maybe can feel a little bit more of that Jack Doyle kind of, mold where it's not like he's going to go out there because you already got your vertical threat. You already got your red zone guy. Now you just need a guy that's consistent. And I think if you can get that guy, I think Hayden Hurst is that guy. And if you can get a guy like him, I mean, I think that really rounds out. And also you have Drew Ogletree that we don't talk about, who was lighting it up in training camp. So, like, could you have a really good 4 tight end group, honestly?
Yep, absolutely. It never hurts to have too many great tight ends,
I mean, last year he was making $3.5 million compared to Gesicki and these guys that are making over 10 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd rather allocate 3-4 million for this guy than pay them, more than double that, more than triple that, actually.
Right, absolutely. All right, last position group that we'll talk about here. And that's the edge group. There's a couple guys here that have been released today or expected to be released. And Frank Clark and Bud Dupree are two guys that have already been released. Khalil Mack and Leonard Fournette are expected to be released. What do you say here, Cody? I mean, do any of these guys, appeal to you? I mean, there's a couple guys here that, have been really big names, but with big name comes a big price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these guys were getting paid for sure. So the question is, how much of a cut are they willing to take, right? I do think the Colts need to add to their pass rush in some capacity. They need to add a veteran in there, because that's when they were at their best, right? When they had a Justin Houston or a Danico Autry or, fill in the blank on whoever you want to put in there. But I just feel like the Colts were better when they had a guy in there. With the 2 young guys they have that aren't even 25 yet, I think it would do well for them to get an option like this. So it really does depend how much are the Colts willing to dish out, because there are options. It's just it might cost you a little bit for these guys that are hovering right around 30 years old. And obviously Bud Dupree is a very interesting name because he signed that mega deal with Tennessee a couple of years ago. And I think it was last offseason, actually, wasn't it? That's crazy how that just changes like that. That's just wild to me. But there are a lot of guys here still available, and guys that were making over $10 million. So obviously it'll really depend on what happens with Yannick Ngakoue and that whole thing. But I think maybe what the Colts are looking for is maybe more of that all down kind of player, a little bit more. Leonard Floyd is a very interesting name to me. I don't know what your thoughts are on him, Derek, but he's not been officially released yet, but I think it's expected that he will. I mean, he's just been a guy that I've always just really enjoyed watching play. And just I feel like he's always just been a very productive player wherever he's gone. And I just have always liked him as a player. Do you have any of these guys that are any of your favorites that you think you would be more than happy if the Colts went after here at defensive end / edge rusher?
I don't know. It's really difficult for me when I'm looking at, these kinds of guys with their contracts. It's really hard to kind of take that into account when you're looking at all of this. But I would say, if I'm going to look at any of these guys, maybe a Leonard Floyd, just because he's a tad bit younger than a couple of these guys, and he's a little less expensive. When you look at,
Yep.
I don't even remember what Bud Dupree got $16.5 million last year.
Yeah.
I know there's no shot he gets that this year, but he's definitely going to want a lot. And Frank Clark's last deal, he just got over 15 million. Bud Dupree's over 30 years old, and Frank Clark's about to be the same way. And
so is Leonard Floyd. They're all about 30.
Yeah, it just that's the problem, is the majority of these kinds of players are just too dang old, man. It's just kind of hard to pick some of these guys, because I just don't want to have an older kind of guy. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do. And even Leonard Floyd is 30. So, it's kind of hard to, pick any of these guys, because all of these guys, while they probably could still be productive, this is not a situation where you're going to have long-term production. If you're taking on any of these guys, that most likely these are going to go down for maybe 2 years. Kind of a similar circumstance to what we assume is going to happen with Gilly Lock after this next year, or maybe we get lucky with that one. But
yeah, I think if there's anybody on here that I'd be willing to give a 2-year deal to, it's Khalil Mack. His production, well, it's not been the same. Obviously, when he was younger, he was obviously insane, and just the things he was able to do. He had, from 2015 to 2018, he had, 10.5 sacks or more every single year. And last year he had 8 sacks. So I think he's a guy that I'm still, even though he's a little bit older, he's still, past 30. I think he's still got more left in the tank. And I think he's a guy that I'm willing to dish a little bit more out to. Now the question is, do some of these guys that are older, do they realize, man, my career, I only have a couple more years here. Honestly, I have good football left. Do I want to go to a team that's rebuilding, like with the Colts, or do I want to go to a contender, like a Kansas City, a Buffalo, a Philly, something like that? Like, that is the biggest question for me with some of these vets, is like, how much is their market going to demand, and how willing is Ballard going to be to go and get one of these guys to be an instant impact there on the edge? So that's going to be interesting to see. But I think if I'm choosing anybody, it's probably still Khalil Mack out of any of these guys.
Yeah, I get you on that. Well, I think that's going to do it for all these guys. There are more people that will end up getting cut, more people who will be on the trading block, more people to discuss. Guys, free agency is just next week. So it's going to be a fun time to, think about all this and prepare for, what kind of players the Colts might get in free agency this year. Cody, I know you and I said this last year, this last free agency, we would not fall into the trap of assuming that something's going to be said early on in Colts free agency. We just need to keep an eye out for what names are already taken versus ones that aren't, and see what other names we could think of that the Colts might try to snag in a few days into free agency, because we just know that's how the Colts roll. So
yeah, exactly. And odds are by the time this video drops, probably it'll be dropped on like Tuesday around lunchtime. We're recording this Monday night. Odds are there'll be a couple other players that probably either get cut or are on the trade block. That's just kind of how it rolls around this time of year. There was so much stuff that did happen, on Monday, that it'll be very interesting to see, come Tuesday. We'll probably have to add more to our list, honestly. So, but it's going to be very interesting nonetheless.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like. Be sure to comment. Tell us what guys we need to be looking at. But thank you so much for all the support. And as always, go Colts.